was, I was 40 years old, no kidding, my birthday, 40 years old, in Iraq. I was the division surgeon in the 101st Airborne Division. And I was responsible for the medical care, not just of the U.S. soldiers, but actually our coalition joint task force. So tens of thousands of people there for the mission, and then responsible for the reconstruction of health care for 5 provinces, the equivalency of 5 states in the United States, along with millions of dollars of U.S. dollars that was there afforded to the commander to put it all together, which he gave me the entire health sector to rebuild. 40 years old, 5 states, tens of thousands of people, the level of responsibility, you don't have opportunities like that. So no kidding, sitting there, you know, at the end of the day with, I think, a little cupcake or something like that, watching the sun go down over the river and saying, wow, who'd have thought that this kid from South Dakota would be sitting here in Saddam's palace with that kind of responsibility. Just you know, another kid down the block who has been put in position, challenged, developed over time, and now has that kind of responsibility. It just doesn't happen anyplace else. Army medicine, you know, why or what is different and so forth. I just tell you that, number one, for the medical folks, the medical training programs are routinely among the very, very best in the country. So, you know, just a couple of years ago, they did a longitudinal study published in a reputable journal that said the #1 training program for surgeons in the country over the last, whatever it was, 15 years, was an Army program. Just the best in the country. The quality of the education is absolutely superb. And then the opportunities to learn how to lead, the whole leadership training that we have, unmatched anywhere in society. That's one thing that the military really knows how to do. Two, I'll give you 2, training and leadership development. So if you need to learn how to train other people to do things, or a group of people to do things, the military gives you a great background in that. And then how to develop leaders, obviously among the very best in the world for what we do. So I grew up in a small town in South Dakota, a long way from anything that would be considered a city. So we spent a lot of time outdoors, went hunting and fishing, and fortunately was in a place that had a wonderful education system, so got a great education. It got to be a kid. So almost idyllic, right? I could not think of a better place to grow up. So yeah, it was kind of a natural for me to join the Army. You ask why I joined, really was to pay for college. Come from a family that not of great means, 3 boys, all of us wanting to go to college, and we have to figure out how to pay for it. So that's what got me started, and from there, ROTC I was interested in, and particularly when then found out about opportunities for education for medical school, which I wanted to go to. So all of a sudden I found myself going through ROTC and then going to Uniformed Services University for medical school. So I had significant obligation, but I was glad to do it because I really enjoyed being part of the Army team. For me personally, wasn't raised in an environment where military was talked about frequently and so forth. So part of it, I guess, the initiator of the deal was to look at the money and what the options were. But the more I did that, the more people I met that were affiliated with the military, the more understood what it is we did and why we did it and so forth, my interest in serving changed. And I think a lot of young people go through that. Pretty transactional early on in all of their relationships, and then you kind of figure out what it is that drives you. And for me, service is one of them. I really enjoy being part of something that's bigger than myself. I really enjoy making a difference in the lives of others. And for a lot of the things that we do, man, you really make a lot of difference in the lives of others, that's for sure. So if you're thinking about it, I think having weigh your options. For folks in an all-volunteer force, we don't necessarily want to have people who feel like they have to do this. I wouldn't ever tell people, no, you absolutely have to. Well, we ought to go through a rational discussion and decide if this is what's for you. And if it is, then you have the opportunity to not only become a better whatever it is that you want to do, doctor, nurse, pharmacist, veterinarian, whatever it is, but you can also go ahead and make a difference to the rest of the country and the world. So as you weigh out your options, as a family physician, I can set up my practice someplace and I can, do all the administrative work and all that sort of thing, or I can join the Army and I can see patients, I can learn how to manage trauma in a battlefield someplace far away that really is going to make a difference to somebody. Either of those are fine. There's nothing wrong with one or the other. But if you're interested in a challenge, if you're interested in trying to be the best you can be, I think you got to look at options like joining the Army. Again, as I was growing up, joining the Army was not something that was at the tip of my tongue, wasn't something that was first and foremost in my mind. But as I learned more about what it is and what I could gain out of it, came to a point about 14 years in my career when the obligation was coming close. Actually, it was about 12 years in. My wife and I sat down and we talked about it, and we went back and forth and all that sort of thing, and we kind of tabled it. And I was working down at the AMED Center in school down in San Antonio with a bunch of young officers trying to teach them about the Army and that sort of thing. And I was all excited about it. My wife one day said, come home, and I'm all excited telling her about all this great stuff that they're doing. She said, I just can't see you doing anything else. I said, time out. What did you just say? She said, well, you love this. You're not really interested in going and stopping doing all of this and go practicing medicine someplace, so why don't you stay in? And that's all it took. Literally, someone just to say that, no, this is what gets you excited. So again, not somebody who was looking to do that to start with, but it just became a passion for me to take care of soldiers and their families, and all aspects of that and all the other things that go with that. I joined and expected, when I first signed for ROTC, I expected to do 4 years and get out. That was the plan. I had other things I wanted to do, and then it just didn't turn out that way. So then after ROTC, or during ROTC, when I decided I really kind of liked this, and the opportunity came to go to Uniformed Services University with the 7 years additional obligation and so forth, I said, yeah, okay, I can do that. 7 years, yeah, so 11 years, you put the two of them together, and then another 3 years for residency, so really 14 years. But, I knew that I liked it. I liked the physical challenges. I liked the ideas of service. I liked the people that I was affiliating with. I liked the challenges that we're working on. So it kind of became a very natural thing. So, and even my plans for medicine changed. I went into medicine. I was going to be an adolescent psychiatrist. That was my plan. Pretty focused on that. I had worked actually in a counseling center in the summer and so forth, and was really enjoyed it. As I went through medical school and the rotations and so forth, I decided, yeah, I really liked that, but I also really liked, delivering babies. I really liked taking care of pediatric patients. I really liked taking care of elderly patients, and like the diversity that family medicine presented. So I changed what I was interested in and ultimately became a family physician so I could do all of those things. As I tell a lot of people, as a family physician, you actually do a lot of adolescent psychiatry as you take care of families. I had my heart set going to an academic institution. I was going to try to go to some place where I could do research and publish and all that sort of thing. And as we went through the match, I matched with Fort Benning, which wasn't known at that time to be a place that did a lot of those kinds of academic pursuits. It was much more operationally focused. So I literally tried to get out of going to Fort Benning. To the point where ultimately I got called into a senior leader's office and was told that I was to cease and desist, that I was going to go to Fort Benning whether I liked it or not. As it turned out, it's probably the best thing that happened to me. It exposed me to a whole different part of the Army, got me familiarity with the Ranger Regiment, which ultimately then I was selected for, in fact, asked to go to be a part of the regiment. And I accepted the challenge, and it profoundly changed the course of what I saw myself doing, as well as my commitment to the Army. What an honor to take care of young men, at that point just young men, who dedicated their lives to learning the craft of being a warrior to defend the United States of America. Absolutely transformational in terms of my perception of self and what was important in life. All parts of our life contribute to the whole. So one of the things I tell people, I have a special needs son. He makes me a much better father. He makes me a much better leader. He makes me much more effective at what I do in my work life, as well as being a better person. So I think all of our lives have moments like that, that we all have crucible events. You never know necessarily when they're coming. You can try to set them up, but the reality is that they will come. And what you do when you have those is what makes all the difference. So one of the things I've enjoyed about being in the military is I get different challenges. They stress or test different parts of my personality, my education, my ability to adapt, whatever it is, so that I can be a better person overall. So I'm actually very thrilled and comfortable with the diversity of things that we get to do within the Army and with anybody wearing a uniform. One of the great joys for medical folks is that the medical community, quite frankly, needs leaders. Whether they're physicians or nurses or medical service corps officers, the medical profession needs people who understand systems. They understand how to lead people, how to properly motivate and train, and all the other things, the skills that we develop here. So, yeah, I tell off, don't feel bad. We all leave, we all leave the Army. The Surgeon General retires, the Chief of Staff of the Army retires. That's the nature of what we do. But for us, we are exquisitely well prepared to transition to the civilian world. I have a whole number of friends and colleagues over the years that I've watched retire. Almost all of them go into some sort of leadership in civilian medical organizations, retire full outright, some of them do, and then a number of them, particularly my physician colleagues, they go back and do their medical specialty. It felt like they've made all their contributions and now they just want to take care of patients, all of which are, perfectly fine, reasonable, understandable, just whatever kind of, makes them excited about getting up in the morning. Our civilian colleagues probably make a little bit more money than we do. I've had a number of conversations with my brother who's also remained on active duty. And, we said years ago, decades ago now, since you put it out that way, we're willing to do this. We're not going to get rich. We'll be comfortable. If you talk with the average sergeant, yeah, I'm making plenty of money. Kind of the bottom line is that we get to work with some incredibly talented people. Some of the brightest people I've ever met, all walks of life, have been not just in Army medicine, not just in the medical field within the military health system, but some of our line commanders. I happen to know, I'm not going to use any names, but a guy who ultimately became a general officer who had his undergraduate degree was in Latin, right? So he's an infantry guy with a Latin degree? Really? Yeah. Yes, no kidding. So some really interesting people who are devoted to ensuring that we protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And they're willing to sacrifice, not just with their lives, yes, but the giving of their life over their lifetime, all of the service-related consequences with deployments, with training exercises and all the other things, being away from their family repeatedly to make sure that this idea of democracy, American democracy, lives. So I talked a little bit about the training, right? The quality training for medical personnel. Easily among the best, among the finest that's available. The second is the leadership development, the whole idea of understanding how to train and how to lead and all that sort of thing, that we actually have a very good program for everyone. And honestly, from my perspective, everybody leads, and particularly within medicine. So if you're a doctor on a team or a nurse that's running a floor, you're leading a team. And so knowing how to do that is really important. But I don't, one of the things that the Army usually says is, you get to see the world. No kidding, you get to see the world. So again, I grew up small town in South Dakota, but I've been in every single state in the United States, including Alaska and Hawaii. I've been to Puerto Rico and Guam for territories. So I've seen most of the United States. I've, at last count, been in over 30 countries. And not just to kill people kind of thing. I've been to 30 countries to actually do work to broaden the medical care available to soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, to work with allies and partners on different problems and ensuring that whatever agreements and all the rest are all being executed properly and our soldiers are getting good care, that kind of stuff. So yeah, you get to see no kidding, you get to see the world, you really do. Never thought I'd be there. I mean, to me, it was a big deal when we went from South Dakota to Canada. Well, that was like, growing up, that was earth-shattering. So now to be in a place, whatever, 40-some years later, having seen every state and been in all those countries, incredible. But the last thing I would tell you, it is a distinct honor when one of America's finest has the worst day imaginable, that we can be there for them. That's deeply moving, and having the opportunity to do that. You have to be a little bit arrogant to say that you can make a difference in somebody's life, but I know, having been there and watching, not personally necessarily doing it, but watching others make a difference in others' lives. Being part of a system where we took a soldier who was a survivor of a helicopter crash early in the war in Iraq, helicopter on fire, PA jumped out of his vehicle, ran in and literally drug him out. Okay, uniforms on fire, put out the fire, all that sort of thing. They do the initial resuscitation there, take a vehicle, get him to a combat support hospital, who does all the initial requirements, all that sort of thing, and having an Air Force critical care air transport team come on a big gray plane, land, pick him up, and within 48 hours is at the Institute of Surgical Research at Brooke Army Medical Center to be able to save this young man's life. To be part of a system like that can do those sorts of things, absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, 4 things why this is a special experience. Sure. Part of what we do is to aid the foreign policy of the United States. And when authorized, we will go ahead and help folks all over the world. I personally didn't go, but probably 10 years ago, major earthquake resulted in landslides. I want to say it was in Pakistan, and we sent a combat support hospital there and ended up leaving the equipment there, just because we knew that they were going to have an ongoing need for the facility, the equipment, and all the rest. We routinely, everywhere we go, even for some of these counterterrorism or war less than full war, we do outreach to local populations. Then if, in the course of whatever activities that we do, if somebody gets hurt that the U.S. is responsible for, we take care of them as well. Remember when I got to Afghanistan, in the hospital there was I think he was about 4 years old, a young boy who had inadvertently been struck by a vehicle and broke a bone in his leg, and so they brought him in. We did the appropriate treatment and so forth, did his rehabilitation, and gave him back to his family. So there are great opportunities to do all kinds of wonderful things. Obviously for things like the terrible earthquake down in Haiti, just over and over again. That's part of what we do. So always thrilled to do that. Always thrilled to go to different parts of the world, work with international organizations, the World Food Program, all of the other World Health Organization, lots of other folks that go to these sorts of places to try and make a difference. As a clinician, it's wonderful to have the opportunity just to take care of people, all types and kinds. Whoever gets there gets the care based on what their needs are. It's a wonderful thing. And you know, a lot of our civilian colleagues do that as well. And they go on mission trips or trips to donate their time and their expertise. We just happen to do it in uniform. First, I will tell you, as a guy now who's a little bit more senior, I have really come to appreciate that none of us really do anything by ourselves. So I think professionally within this, I can no longer even claim that I did anything. But I will say that a couple of things I'm really proud of, that I was part of teams that did stuff. So the first example would be bringing tactical combat casualty care to the rest of the Army. Was in the Ranger Regiment, and we kind of put that together after Somalia with Captain Butler and all the other folks at SOCOM and all the rest. Really implemented the program, the training program, that sort of thing. But was part of a team that brought that to the 101st Airborne Division when I was division surgeon there. So that was a big step forward for our Army, and I think that's made a difference. The second one would be one of several different people that contributed significantly to the creation of the medical simulation training centers. We had a simulation center there at Fort Campbell that General Thomas, before me, was able to get some resources together and put some things there, but really kind of operationalized that and then prepared it and showed it to the rest of the Army. That led to ultimately the creation of the medical simulation training centers for all of our medics. So a couple of things that just really proud of our Army, to recognize those things and to bring them on board for the health and well-being, the treatment of soldiers in conflict.